NERDSoul.
Bippity boppity boo.
Passion for the shit you don't.
Hey y'all, thank you so much for joining us on this brand spanking new podcast here on NERDSoul. I'm Lisa, known as Lady Lisa to some of you, and I'm joined by my sister cousin, former alleged partner in crime, Cletus to my Cleophas. Say hello to Kim.
Hey y'all, peace, love, and light.
And this is Black Together, a walk in her shoes. And how would you describe what we're going to be doing, Kim, or what we're going to be talking about?
Well, the overall premise of Black Together, a walk in her shoes, is insight into the Black woman's experience on various topics. Now, keep in mind that we're counted two Black women out of millions of Black women all over the globe. And we're sharing our individual perspective. And that may not necessarily reflect that of NERDSoul.
Okay, cool. And before we go any further, we'd like to thank NERDSoul for allowing us to be on his platform. You can check out me, Lady Lisa, and NERDSoul on ThatNERDSoul.com on Tuesdays for the original Black Together. NERDSoul and his crew on Wednesdays for Beats Vibes Life, and NERDSoul and I again on Fridays for Lounging. So again, all of that will be on That NERDSoul. All right, so let's jump into it. What do we have in our shoebox today, Kim?
I'm so glad you asked. Today we have a sensible 2-inch black pump.
Oh, okay.
And that's because we are talking about the power or lack thereof of the Black woman's vote, her role in the political agendas, and feminism.
Okay. So, I'm thinking really for us to even really be talking about, the Black woman's influence on the vote, we have to kind of go back just a little bit. For some time now, we've been dealing with, as Black women, our husbands, our sons, our brothers, our men, being shot, killed, assaulted by the police. And so, of course, with that, we've become more active in trying to change policy, focusing on what policing does look like, the whole policing culture. And so we've kind of almost been forced, into being advocates or trying to force that change. And so with that being said, of course, the powers that be have noticed that, and I think they've used that, to their advantage. And so with that, our voices have become, more powerful and, been pushed to the forefront in terms of influence, and how things happen, who's coming into office and all that kind of thing. What do you think?
I agree, especially in the last few years. We have seen the mothers of slain victims of the police really starting to make a mark. I want to say, even if we go back to maybe like Trayvon Martin, even though that wasn't a police shooting, but she really started to put her face out there, really let the overall experience of everything that happened be brought to a national audience. And I believe she's even running for office.
Yeah, I forget what office, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is powerful. I mean, of course, nobody wants to be in the situation of having to bury a child. That is just unimaginable to any mother. or, any parent in general. But I think that if, if it brings, if there's some positivity that can be brought from it, I think that it's just finding ways to organize and gain power so that we're not continuously on this auto repeat of being slain, and then we march, we protest, and, things die down
Yeah.
until the next person is killed.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think there were like 3 main women that I can think of that were, I want to say, kind of being pushed back and forth and being looked at as possible representatives, if you will. There was Stacey Abrams, Keisha Bottoms, and Kamala Harris, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know, if I have it correct, that Biden was kind of going between those 3, among other white women. But from what I understand, at one point, he decided he was going to choose a Black woman for, I'm sure, various reasons.
Right.
And so now we have his choice is Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Miss Harris?
You really want me to get in trouble now, don't you?
I mean,
Okay, so let me preface what I'm going to say.
tread
with
lightly with the safe 2-inch heel.
Because it's like whenever, for whatever reason, it's very difficult in modern society for you to be able to express any type of critical analysis on certain people in certain situations. So because the ticket is Trump versus Biden,
Right.
it's almost like there's an expectation of Biden supporters to not want anything mentioned about some of the policies and behaviors of both candidates, meaning Biden and Kamala, that, no one wants there to be a negative, or what could be viewed as negative commentary,
Right.
or assessment. And I think that it's important. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to vote in opposition
Exactly.
of that particular candidate, but I think it's important to know where people have either stand now or have stood on different issues, so that you can know your plan of attack when you're coming to the table with an agenda.
Right.
How can we come as Black people and say these are the things that we want if we don't know what the record has been, what their positions have been, and how to engage in those conversations when you don't know that person's perspective?
Yeah. And
Okay.
and give a fair assessment, because I think some people want to say, oh, well, you're assessing her in a way or criticizing in a way that's not fair. You don't criticize, anyone else. And it's like, no, we do. But we want to give, a lot of times we want to give a Black pass.
Right.
Oh, this person's Black, so yay, let's just support them blindly. And then we
Right.
looking crazy when we find out something about them later on. Right.
Or a white pass when a white person does something that's considered socially acceptable in Black culture. They're invited to the barbecue, and there's just like this blanket statement without knowing any background on the person.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that being said, I don't know. When Biden first announced that he had chosen her, something just didn't sit well with me. I think I had already been kind of researching and studying her background, and just to see her part in policy and in terms of incarcerating Black men,
Mhm.
right, and keeping them incarcerated so as not to disturb how they were a part of labor in prison.
Right.
I mean, that's just disturbing,
Right.
right? And some people want to say, oh, that was so long ago. And, it's like, but she won't speak on it. She gets asked about it, and she does the politicians, tap dance.
Right.
And my thing is, if that's in the past and that's something you feel was wrong or you've moved past, say that.
Right.
Say that, because what else can anybody really say? They can just say, well, I still don't like it, but they can't continue to question whether that's where you're going. If you say flat out, no, that was wrong, and this is where I stand now.
Right.
But she won't do that.
She
And
won't.
that's an issue with me. And I honestly feel like Biden is going to be putting her in position to take over a lot more responsibilities than most vice presidents.
Mm-hmm.
I just have this feeling that he's going to take a little bit more of a back seat. And some of that could be to Kamala Harris's detriment, because he could just be like, oh, well, she took lead on that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The whole thing just doesn't make me feel okay. I'm not a super fan of Biden.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen video where he was a little too touchy-feely
Mm-hmm.
with women and young girls. I
Mm-hmm.
said it. I'm not giving my opinion. I'm telling you what I saw on video.
Right.
So I hate that we're in a position that we have Trump and then we have, Biden and Harris, and we're like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's, you know,
It's not really, in my opinion, an election to get excited about.
no.
Of course, voting is necessary. It's powerful. We have to, exercise our right to vote. Um, I'm just tired of us being in this situation where we have to choose the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
I'm so sick of that.
Yeah.
And it's time for some real deal policy change that is specific to Black people.
Absolutely.
I'm tired of this kind of vague language
Mm-hmm.
that's used, well, vague as far as Biden is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it comes to Trump, he's just like, oh, I help the Blacks. I'm good for the Blacks. Oh, Blacks love me. Blacks, I cut Blacks a check. You know what I mean? Like he's just he's a whole other ball of
Martian.
wax. But
Yeah.
yeah, but all of this vague commentary
Yeah.
that we have been offered from the Democratic Party as a whole.
True.
I think that now more than ever, with all of the civil unrest that's going on, and the pot is kind of boiling over.
Mm-hmm.
It's really an opportunity if we take it. It's a great opportunity for us to really start demanding that our needs be addressed.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you on that. I get so irritated when some people start off talking about issues that affect Black people, very specifically, Black people, African Americans. And then as they go on in their conversation, they interchange Black or African American with people of color,
Mm-hmm.
minorities. No. Black people are facing issues that are very specific to Black people.
Yeah.
African Americans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people of color includes, of course, all of these, other people, and their men are not being murdered by cops in mass.
Right.
Our men are.
Right.
And it's just very irritating, and when I hear someone speak in that manner and they have an issue continuing to say black people, and it's almost like something clicks in their head and goes, oh, well, wait a minute, let me say people of color because I don't want to leave anybody out. It's like where
Right.
they're being left out of being shot.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
you can't have it both ways.
It's
And it's
very
just irritating to me because it makes me feel like you're not being genuine. You're not
right.
being at all genuine. I'll listen to someone who doesn't mind being very specific and saying black or even African American, because even if you want to be for real, you have to decipher between those two. And
Yeah.
some people would disagree, but the African American experience is again a very specific experience versus someone who's black but did not grow up in America.
100%. Yes.
So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and this is, I'm gonna step with my kitten heel on this one. Okay, so uh, Kamala Harris, just recently, from what I've seen, maybe I just hadn't seen anything before, but it seems like more information about how she's grown up, her background, all of those things are very recently available. And that's
Mm-hmm.
even with some research.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't know how to take her. I'm going to be real. I don't know how to take her. She's a black woman. I'm not taking that from her.
Mm-hmm.
She's not an African American woman.
Right. She's
And
right. She's biracial.
she's biracial. She is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
And
her experience,
her father is from the Caribbean or
yes,
okay, okay.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that in and of itself makes it very different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, because of how she looks, she may have had a very, not even very, she may have had somewhat of an African American experience in terms of how
Mm-hmm.
she's treated and how people see her. But I still think it was different because the two cultures from her parents that she grew up with are very different from the African American culture.
Right.
And I just don't know if this embrace, if you will, that she's been giving the African American community is genuine.
Yeah.
I know she's in her sorority and all of that. It just doesn't feel genuine.
Well, and I agree because even when she was running for president,
Mm-hmm.
or they were going through that whole process, I felt like she was pandering. Anytime that I saw her on what would be considered black forums,
Mm-hmm.
she's talking about, yeah, I've smoked weed. It's like, to me, it was not much different than some of the white candidates that want to slap the high five, hey, I like chicken too,
The hot
like,
sauce in the purse.
right. Exactly, like that whole thing, it
Yeah.
just it was off-putting to me.
Yeah.
And
The
so,
the shot of her with the Timberlands coming off the plane.
right, I feel like everything that she does is very calculated.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not to diminish, because I feel like I have to put this on auto repeat, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when people hear anything that they consider negative
Mm-hmm.
about a person, they're going to shut down and not receive anything
Right.
negative.
Right.
So I want to be clear, like I appreciate all that she's done for, as far as sex trafficking, survivors of any type of sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. She has a decent record as far as that is concerned. And
Yes.
so I can give her props for that and
Absolutely.
still say, I find your stance or your view of Black men, because
Mm,
obviously there's something there with her and Black men. So
mhm,
your issue with Black men, I find problematic
mm.
because
Yeah.
you have allowed it to manifest in the legal system.
Mm. Yeah.
So both things can be true at the same time.
That's true.
And neither one would necessarily indicate, from my perspective, who I would support or who I wouldn't support.
Right.
Both things to me are, both things are true.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was a podcast that I was watching sometime, and they were having pretty much the same discussion in terms of politics. Um, and there was a young lady who was actually from, I want to say she was from Ghana. I believe her parents were from Ghana. So she was like first generation American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
And she was kind of talking about her perspective and her experiences. And she said she thought it was very interesting that we had Barack Obama as president, and now we're looking at Kamala Harris as vice president. And she pretty much said, what is America's issue with having an actual African American
Mm-hmm.
in office?
Right.
Yes. And I was like, huh,
Yeah. That's
you
real.
know, that's very real, because the powers that be, they know and they understand
Mm-hmm.
that, like I said, it's a different experience that an African American has
Mm-hmm.
when you have a mother, a grandmother that grew up in America, that, you know, can talk about their grandmother or great grandmother that, you know, they knew lived right after slavery. When they can
Right.
talk about Jim Crow and having to go to, you know, the Black water fountain,
Right.
you know, having to find a bathroom that they could use and how filthy that bathroom was because it was the
Right.
Black bathroom.
Yep.
You know, all of those different experiences, it's different when
It
that
is.
person is
Mm-hmm.
in office.
Yeah. And even I was thinking when you were talking about Kamala earlier and you were talking about her experience being basically the product of two immigrants, and her visually appearing Black. I thought about also colorism and how that plays a part in things.
Mm-hmm.
As a chocolate woman, in particular, growing up in the 80s as a chocolate girl,
Mm-hmm.
there was definitely a difference in how I was perceived,
Mm-hmm.
and whether I was, there was a question mark or an exception to the rule
Mm-hmm.
to say anything regarding beauty
Yeah.
for someone who had a chocolate face.
Yeah.
And so, yes, she does appear Black, but
Mm-hmm.
she's not chocolate. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and neither was Barack or is Barack.
Right.
And so I think that plays a role as well, because we know that symbols and imagery is very powerful.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's an accident that, they look the way that they do and they are in the
Absolutely.
position or have the opportunities that they have.
Absolutely. And, you know, again, just to be sure, not to say anything, you know, really negative about Obama in that manner, because I do remember there was this picture of Obama when he was in office, and this little young Black boy had visited him in his office. And Barack Obama was bending down because the little boy wanted to see if his hair felt like his own hair. And that was a powerful image. And so for a lot of little Black boys and girls, that was a powerful thing to see him. You know, we're just diving into, you know, the deeper parts of it and
Right.
acknowledging that the powers that be are very calculated
Right.
and who they allow, and I'll say
Mhm.
allow to be in that space or
Mhm.
even run to be in that space, and who they even consider, you know, a choice.
Right.
So, yeah.
I
So,
agree.
um, let's go on to another topic that kind of intertwines with this, um, and it's feminism. Feminism.
Mhm.
So, huh, when I just, I don't know where to go with this one. You know,
Yeah.
still got on my kitten heels because, when I think of feminism now, and I know feminism, of course, goes, way back decades, but the way feminism stands now in 2020, I kind of start thinking about the whole Me Too movement,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I understand the Me Too movement, but it's really interesting to me how, I'm not going to say that, white women hijack stuff
Right.
and hug it and embrace it and say, this is mine. This is
Right.
about me. This is mine. I'm going to change up all the rules, regulations, and all of that.
Mhm.
And in, some people have, in my opinion, kind of perverted the Me Too movement.
Mhm.
Um, and it seems to kind of push away or leave out Black women,
Right.
in my
Well,
opinion.
that's kind of been the trend over
Yeah.
the years. You know what I mean? Even if it hasn't gotten to this extent, even if you talk about like the Black Panther Party,
Yeah.
it wasn't hijacked, so to speak, but the narrative, someone else gains control of the narrative and then
Hmm.
starts to make it something that it's not,
Yeah.
you know? And so that, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of that, like it ends up turning into something where the initial message you're trying to scream over all of the other stuff for
Hmm.
the original message to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just feel like, I don't know. I guess I do know because you're right. Because in the original, women's suffrage movement, to go to that, white women, were not fighting for the rights of all women.
Right.
They were fighting for the rights of white women.
Right.
They were not in any way, shape, or form interested in making sure that Black women had rights
Right.
at all.
Right.
And in doing my research, they kind of made it clear they did not really want that to happen.
Right.
And it kind of goes along, up to today. And it just feels like, I don't think it's a mistake that when uh, we see those in leadership in feminism, we see mostly white faces.
Right.
I don't really think that's a mistake at all. And
Hmm.
so feminism, is very, to me, very complicated. It's not really cut and dry.
Yeah.
Even the stance that some women have taken in terms of, and I can't remember who exactly said it, but I know someone started this whole thing of believe all women. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's no, 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 no. Hear all women,
Right.
but not necessarily believe all women. And I'm
Right.
not saying that because you shouldn't believe women. I'm saying that because you can't believe every person,
Right.
but
Well,
everyone deserves to be heard.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And both of us are mothers of Black boys.
right.
And white women have a history, a legacy
Mm.
of, you know, jumping into bed with, or, you know, desiring sexually Black men.
Right.
And then if that situation does not turn out the way that they would like, then it's deemed something that wasn't consensual, you know.
Absolutely.
And we've seen, you know, that goes back to slavery time, and that is, you know, recent as well.
Yes.
And so across the board, I think for anybody to just be given this blanket of protection that,
Yeah.
you know, that they're telling the truth, I think that does a disservice
Absolutely.
to everyone. You know?
Absolutely.
Right. No one group of people has like the hold on truth. That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me.
Absolutely.
And in, you know, in light of all of these Karen videos, you know, if we're really going to talk about, you know, truth
Yeah.
and providing a blanket of truth, like we're seeing video recording after video recording of blatant lies
Yeah.
that are being told, to our detriment.
Yep.
And so, you know, like you said, to just to think that believing every woman or any group of people,
Yeah.
is ridiculous.
Yeah. It's the same as saying we should deem this person guilty because I said so.
Right.
Period. I
Right.
said it, and that's what it is. And if you don't believe it, then you don't support women.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And something else that I was thinking about, when you first started talking about feminism, you know, the ideology or the so-called objective of feminism is basically for men and women to be treated equally on all scales, whether it's professionally or, you know, whatever, on all scales, there's supposed to be equality. Well, to me, if that truly were the agenda and objective, and it was inclusive of Black women, then every feminist organization that's out there would be, on the front lines for the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yep.
Because if it's equality for all women, it's clear that systematic or systemic racism exists.
Right.
That's, you know, that's real to us, whether naysayers want to, you know, come
it's
on
not
board.
real to us. It's real, period.
Right. Well, but I'm just saying, you know, because
Yeah.
I know there are going to be those who, you know, say whatever it is that they're going to say. We
It's
know that
real.
it's real. We know that it's real. And so I feel like there would be a lot of different things where they would have shown up, you know, as recently as Brianna Taylor. You know what I mean? Like, this is a woman who was murdered in cold blood. And the circumstances of that murder, that home invasion, the police activity, all of that, you know, even if you wanted to wait until all of the details were out, because I know certain groups, they always say, well, we haven't heard the whole case yet. Even if that was the situation, there's enough of a question mark for feminist movements to start getting involved and saying, hold up, wait a minute, we need to do further investigation.
Yeah.
But it seems like time after time, whenever Black women are marginalized, violated, whatever the case may be, the feminist movement is silent. And
Dead
so
silent.
I think they have proven that they're not interested, in including us now, and that it was never the motive from the beginning for us to be included.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And it was something that, I know what it was. So in terms of wanting everything to be equal for men and women, a lot of women will probably be hot about me saying this, but it is what it is. If we really wanted everything to be equal, and we really wanted equal treatment, then that means that we have to stop sexualizing men the way we do. Let me tell you what I mean. So, watching Ellen. Ellen is famous for having, different actors come on her show that are considered sex symbols. And she'll be sitting there on the couch with them and just take off your shirt. Just take off your shirt. Right? And the women in the audience start screaming and hollering and whistling, and he'll take his shirt off. Now, if on another talk show that a man hosted had a woman come on his show that is considered a sex symbol and told her to take off anything, a shoe,
right,
we'd have a problem.
Right.
So in instances such as that, it's a contradiction.
Right.
Because, a lot of times we only see it as, oh, we want to be equal in terms of pay. We want to be equal in terms of, our rights. Well, we have to make it equal in some instances, and it's up to us to make it equal. We can't say that we don't want to be sexually harassed and we don't want to be seen as, sex pots or sexual objects, but then we objectify men.
Right.
And that's supposed to be okay.
Right.
I'm just saying.
That's so true. It's so true. And what I thought about, what came to mind for me is when a woman will aggressively, violently jump into a man's face, assault him, that type of thing. And then there's this outrage if he defends himself.
Yeah.
Once again, let me, because there's always that one person that's like, oh, she's advocating for a man to hit a woman. No. I'm not advocating for put it this way. I'm advocating for people to keep their hands to themselves.
Thank you.
And I think that there are a lot of women who think that it is okay to be physically violent with a man. Absolutely. And there's an expectation that he is not to either retaliate or to defend himself because she's a woman.
Right.
But if we're looking at equality, just like what you said, if we're looking at equality, then you should accept the 2-piece and a biscuit that you given out.
That's right. And I
Everybody
agree.
keep their hands to themselves.
I agree. And it's funny because they had this discussion on The View one day, and Whoopi Goldberg took that same stance. People keep their hands to themselves. And I forgot who they were talking about. And everyone else on there jumped on her. And I'm like, she's not saying I advocate for men to hit women. She's saying, I advocate for everybody to keep their hand to themselves. And don't be surprised once you get bold enough to bust another person upside their head and you get bust upside your head back.
Exactly.
Because that's the thing. It's not okay to say, oh, well, a woman can hit a man and it doesn't hurt him like if he hit her. Well, if she takes a chair and cracks you across your back, that might hurt a bit.
Right.
That kind of thing. And I'm sorry, I totally agree, because you're assuming as a woman, you may say in your mind, well, he won't hit me because I'm a woman. But do you know? Are you willing to take that risk?
Right.
Because if he hits you, it won't be nothing nice.
Exactly. You don't get to decide what the consequence is for you when you violate somebody's personal space.
Thank you.
When you are aggressive and violent to somebody else, you don't get to choose how they respond. Absolutely. So you get what you get. And it's no longer about, well, it's not fair. And, he's stronger and, I'm a woman and all. No. You knew that you were a woman when you behaved aggressively, right? Yep. You knew that he was stronger than you, or that he had the potential to split your wig when you got up in his face.
It's true.
And so you don't get to choose the outcome. That's up to him.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And then besides that, what gives you that right to put your hands on somebody else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What gives you that right? Because we want to say when abusive men make excuses about, oh, well, she did this and she made me angry. We say that's no excuse. But how come we have an excuse?
Right.
You
That's
know?
real.
So if we're going to talk about equality, we have to talk about equality across the board.
Right.
Um, and it's like you said, we have to look at it from the perspective of we have sons.
Yes.
And so I wouldn't want my son to grow up and have some woman hitting on him. And I'm sitting there saying, well, don't put your hands on her. Well, she's not going to be beating the mess out of him, giving him black eyes and all this kind of foolishness. And she just walking around like it's just another day.
Right. That's real. I tell my sons all the time, I did not give birth to punching bags. I tell them that all the time because I need for them to understand that that is a toxic relationship, and that once that line is crossed, it's very difficult to not cross that line again. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's physical violence, you know, other forms of disrespect, cheating, whatever. The line always grows further and further away once that first violation occurs.
Yeah.
So it's better to just leave that situation as opposed to hoping that it'll be different. You know, and I don't want my children to be put in a position to have to decide whether it's right for them to defend themselves against a woman. You know what I mean? And I don't want to be put in the position to have to go protect my babies.
Right.
Because I'm human.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm human. And that's real.
Exactly.
So I remember seeing a show, I think it was What Would You Do? And they did a test where they had a man being physically aggressive towards a woman versus a woman being physically aggressive towards a man, and different people's reactions. And time after time, immediately when the man was aggressive to the woman, people stepped in and stopped it immediately. But when it was the woman being aggressive towards the man, people walked by. You know, they may have kind of did the rubbernecking thing to just be nosy. You know, some people even laughed, but nobody intervened.
Yeah.
Nobody intervened.
Yeah, because we've normalized it in our society. You know, we've normalized it. And I think most people probably think, well, what did he do?
Right. He must have deserved it in some way.
Versus if they see a man hitting on a woman, oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Right.
So that's you know, that's my take on that. So was there anything else you wanted to kind of touch on today?
Well, you put me on the spot with that question. I did want to mention when we were talking about the whole Biden and Trump thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention to the listeners out there that I looked on Trump's website and I looked on Biden's website, and I found it very interesting that on Trump's website, I was basically looking at their platform. I wanted to see what their positions were. So when I looked at Trump's website, you could not navigate through the site if you did not make a donation. There was no way to see if there was even a platform listed on the site because you had to donate, which of course I'm not doing that. Right. So when I did further research to kind of just see, well, what's the deal? Because I mean, we've heard, the build a wall and I help the blacks and all. We've heard all of those things, but I just wanted to kind of see what was out there. Right. So what I found out is that in August, his administration released bullet points of what they plan to do for the reelection. Okay. No explanation or anything, just literally bullet points.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So some of the bullet points I want to mention really quick.
Okay.
So he plans to provide 10 million jobs in 10 months.
Okay.
I mean, like, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, first of all, right now, all of the reports are saying that 400,000 jobs have been created since the Trump administration. And we already know that part of that is overflow from the Obama administration.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, let's just say I'll give him credit for half, just for this conversation. So let's just say 200,000 jobs were created in 4 years, okay, because of his doing. So mathematically, we are to believe that even though in the first 4 years, he has created 200,000 jobs, that in the first 10 months of being reelected, he's going to manifest 10 million jobs.
Bippity boppity boo, if you will.
So, that was very interesting to me. Nowhere in the bullet points did he talk about the Affordable Care Act or, Obamacare that has been coined. Nowhere in those bullet points did they talk about repeal and replace.
Oh, yeah.
Even though that's what they've been saying on TV, but the bullet point only talked about prescription drug costs going down, and pre-existing conditions being protected. I don't know exactly how that would come about if we're not addressing healthcare as a whole.
Right.
But this was part of the bullet points. And there were about 50. There were about 50 bullet points. But
so 50 random thoughts.
Yeah. So here's something interesting about our president who refuses to denounce white supremacy in a full sentence. I mean, I know that sentences are difficult for him, but in this 50-point bullet point memorandum that he has, he wants to deem drive-by shootings as acts of domestic terrorism. Okay, so
interesting.
I find that very interesting as well. And what else did he say about? Because everything was worded in such an interesting way. Under education, the goal was to teach American exceptionalism. So my thought was,
exceptionalism, EX or A's?
Yes.
So exceptional.
Right. So I'm not going to say we're, but Americans, because we know he's not talking about us. So that to teach that Americans are exceptional in comparison to whom would be my question.
And what is the point? This isn't an issue. Americans already feel that they're exceptional. To everyone. They don't need to be taught. They've been taught that for generations.
Yes. Yeah.
Just
yeah, he this was a good one. This bullet point, and I'm going to quote it. Okay. Hold China fully accountable for allowing the virus to spread around the world. That was a bullet point for re-election. Yeah, so
we want people to be held accountable.
Right. But certain people, okay? Because remember, Americans are exceptional. But
But if you're
anyone
going to say
outside
they're
of
exceptional, then they have to have added responsibility. Do they not? So, don't get me started.
yeah, so on the flip side of that, because like I said, some of the language with this PowerPoint or what this bullet point thing with Trump, the language seemed to me like more dog whistling.
Yeah,
You know what I
of
mean?
course.
To me. But then on the flip side, when I looked at Biden's website, he had actual individual tabs for so many groups. Like, here's the agenda for Black people. Here's the agenda for Asians. Here's the agenda for Muslims. Here's the agenda for Jews. Like, there were several listings of agendas that he had. And on one side, I can say, I can see where that would be a good thing because different groups have different needs that need to be addressed. On the other side, it makes me wonder if this is just a ploy because of the climate that we're in right now. And so many different groups have been ostracized by this administration. And he's trying to get people to come on board. So I don't really know how genuine this is.
Right.
I
will say to me, it kind of feels like, well, you paid attention. You paid attention to what these individual groups are asking for, what they're saying, so that's another point of view. But, we'll see. We'll find out if it's a ploy or not. But at least you were able to get to those tabs without inserting a dime.
That's very true. Because our tab was the lift every voice, the Biden plan for Black America.
You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. That's the same as Hillary Clinton going into the pulpit of that Black church, look up the video, people, and saying, I don't feel no ways tired. It's like, well, I do. Go sit down. You don't get to do that. Like,
oh my goodness.
You know what? I think that's a good place to wrap it up. We're going to need to put on our flats and get on the body.
Because we're all the way tired.
Yeah. In all ways. All right. So, once again, thank you all for listening, for joining us. Thank you, NERDSoul, for allowing us on your platform. We have a lot more coming up on our shows to come. I hope you all enjoyed it. Give us some comments. And we hope that you will join us next time. So say bye, Kim.
Peace, love, and light, everybody.
Bye, y'all.